So we have a bunch of stories to break down. The interview Tucker Carlson had with Vladimir Putin is officially up on tuckercarlson.com. It is a must watch. There are some dry points, I must admit. The first half an hour is a history lesson. I literally fell asleep. Forgive me, but I'm falling asleep. Listen, it's like 1826, the state of Rus, and the baptism, and I'm just like, this is okay. Tucker actually caveats the interview in the beginning saying, we thought he was pattering for time, but there was no time limit to the interview. So he's like, I genuinely believe Putin was expressing his statement that there is a historical claim to Ukraine we have. And I agree with Tucker. And I don't see why anyone in the U.S., anyone in the West, even the government, would take a different view than Tucker did. Putin is explaining that historically Ukraine is theirs. That's basically what he's saying. And that shows motivation for this conflict. But one of the biggest issues that we had mentioned leading up to this interview was whether or not Tucker Carlson would ask about Evan Gershkovich, the Wall Street Journal reporter who has been in jail for just about a year. Turns out Tucker Carlson not only did ask Putin about this journalist, but actually requested that Putin release him into his custody as a sign of good faith to return home. Bravo, Tucker Carlson. Wow. And Putin made the biggest mistake of the night. He said no. He did say a deal could be made. Interestingly, he went on to say that this 30, I believe he's 32. Yeah, he was caught red-handed with classified information, and he was under the direction of U.S. agencies. He may be a journalist, but we know who's really pulling the strings, and he was seeking secret government information, confidential classified information, which basically makes him a spy. Now, I'll just say this. The big narrative leading up to this interview was that Tucker Carlson was a mouthpiece for Vladimir Putin, and that Vladimir Putin was going to lie, propagandize to justify his invasion of Ukraine, and not to believe him. The fear was that Tucker Carlson was giving a platform to a war criminal. Imagine how bad it would have been for the Western media and the press when they were forced to report Tucker Carlson returns home with Evan Gershkovich, saving his life from Russian jail. Vladimir Putin agrees in a good faith effort and returns the American journalist home. Tucker Carlson would have taken the headlines across the board. The interview would become the biggest, bigger than it already is, and it would put everything Putin says on a pedestal. But Putin made that mistake. And he said, hey, what do I get out of it? We'll think about it. Putin should have just said, absolutely, Mr. Carlson. I want you, because then when Tucker Carlson's plane landed, every news outlet in the country would have a reporter waiting at the airport. There would be 10,000 cameras. Tucker, what happened? Evan, what's going on? And everything then said in the interview would be 1,000-fold. Wow.
I think Putin's a straight up extremely cynical political actor, however. And if he was able to get for Brittany Griner, he traded Victor Bout for that. I'm reading it was only in December 2022. So Putin knows he could get a lot for this journalist, and I think he knows, and we're going to be seeing more of this around the world. China's going to be doing more of this, or has been doing a lot of this too. We're going to see a lot of this happening in Iran too, but kidnapping and then these rogue, cynical political regimes trying to exchange those for political prisoners that are serving in the U.S. who are actual criminals. I don't believe this Wall Street Journal, Evan Gershkovich, he's only, I think, 32, is any sort of spy. Journalism is illegal in Russia. So I think I need to commend Tucker Carlson for even asking about this, though. I need to give him credit, especially with all the hype surrounding this interview and leading up to it. I don't know. So again, right after commending Tucker, I do have to say, though, when he did interview Kanye, he did cut out certain portions. I don't know if this is the full interview that he did conduct. I don't know if in the next couple of weeks we're going to see a leak of other footage go down, but I wasn't able to see all of it. But from what I saw, I think Tucker did a relatively fair job.
Did he didn't bring up Snowden at all, did he?
No, I don't think so.
I don't think so.
That's kind of been under the radar, Snowden over in Russia.
Also, what's her name that accused Joe Biden of sexual assault? Tara Reid. She's in Russia. But
Yeah,
I don't want to derail away
She
from.
fled to Russia.
Yeah, she's there now. She just did an interview with God. Who was it? Was it Ivory Hecker? She did an interview with somebody.
I can't believe Putin didn't just say yeah.
Yeah, that would have been truly epic. And I don't think he had considered that.
Well, he could get so much for it.
And
He
he's on
got
the
Victor
spot.
Bout.
No, but I
Goodwill,
understand what you're
man.
saying. That's
You want
true.
plus 15 goodwill,
He got
you
the
know?
merchant of death for a WNBA player. I mean, it's crazy. But just think about, I mean, in this interview, and we'll get into this in greater detail, he said that he approached Bill Clinton about joining NATO. And that Clinton said, yeah, actually, yes. But then later that night came back and said, you know what? We talked about it. No, it's not going to happen. There were key narrative points Putin clearly wants to be heard. Unless, you know what, to be honest, maybe he does not care at all one way or another what the American people think. I'd imagine that as the president of a country that is currently at war with the West, he would want to propagandize the West as much as possible to shatter sentiment, any favor towards funding and supporting Ukraine, which is actually just NATO war efforts. And that's how you do it. What value do you get from some Wall Street Journal guy? He's one dude, but you could amplify the power of that interview. So, you know, I think ultimately for the United States, it's a good thing Putin misstepped here and didn't do these things.
When it comes to the propaganda, he did say in the war of propaganda, it is very hard to defeat the United States. They control the media. Like, he knows what he's up against. And I also think when it comes to the Wall Street Journal journalist, he probably doesn't want to show like weakness. You probably see it as weakness to give into an interview and say like, I'll release someone just because Tucker Carlson asked.
Oh, I disagree.
You think so?
Strength.
You think it's strength for him to be like, okay, since Tucker brought it up, it'll be good. It'll look good for me publicly to release someone instead of doing on his own volition.
Absolutely.
If he's like, the good faith of
He would
you
say,
coming
Tucker,
here is enough, is all I need.
You have come to me to allow me to speak to you and those who follow you to share the views that we have, knowing that our countries do not agree. For your efforts, I will release to you Evan Gershkovich. And I'm telling you, like, every journalist would have 10 photographers waiting at the airport. As the plane is landing, all the cameras are going to be filming it from every possible angle. It would have been the biggest story in the world.
Right.
To be fair, it probably already is the biggest story, but it would have been substantially larger. Yeah. And it's I imagine the worst thing for the West, that Tucker Carlson not only shared Putin's narrative, but that Putin showed to be amicable. Imagine coming back and Tucker saying, they are lying to you about the position of Vladimir Putin and why he's at war in Ukraine. They are lying to you about who he is. He has, even as a sign of good faith, released to us this reporter. Putin's bad at what he does. I mean, he's really good at a lot of things he does, but this was his massive opportunity. I'm surprised he didn't say yes.
The backlash to the interview, though, is like, did no one watch the Oliver Stone stuff?
Yeah,
It didn't happen that long ago. And like, you get the same feeling. He's a charming, intelligent guy, whether you like him or not. Like, he's good at interviews.
I think he rehashed too that he is a Russian irredentist, and I know it's cliche to say at this point, but he does believe that the collapse of the Soviet Union was the biggest like geopolitical strategy, and he was a part
mean
of the
failure? Right.
and one of the, well, it depends on who you ask. So I do think he's still cynically thinking about these things. He wants as much of Ukraine as he's going to be able to take. And if there is a ceasefire in Ukraine, I'm sure down the line he'll be interested in taking another bite of it. And if there's any part of NATO that collapsed with Estonia and Latvia, I'm sure he'd want to take a chunk of those too, because again, he sees those as a part of Russia, all of the former USSR. It's bad and dangerous, and I think we need to be more clear-eyed about the threat he poses.
But I can also give you one very, very obvious, reasonable reason why he did not release this person. It's very easy for us on the surface to say, look at the political PR opportunity. The other reality is that Evan Gershkovich actually has very serious classified information in his brain.
Oh, that's true.
That simply by speaking to the CIA would compromise the security position of Russia, so he will never be released.
Yeah, I see. It is possible, I think, for a journalist to be over there and be a spy. We know they're spies. We've been infiltrated over here for years, you know? It's definitely possible.
I don't think
I mean,
they have
it's-
free speech and a free media in Russia, though.
But it's
Writ large.
It's the, you know, it's the subliminal, the liminal, and the superliminal, right? The superliminal being like an American reporter working in Moscow, just quite literally reporting whatever is going on, making sure that information comes to the American public. That's the on in your face. Then you have people who like maybe at one point worked for an industry or whatever, and they're over there and they learn things and they post on social media. But the subliminal is like under the surface, one way or another, reporting to a U.S. agency to deliver information. Mm-hmm. And so, you know, when we have like Xinhua or RT or Sputnik, these are just regular journalists. Mm-hmm. To be fair, like Xinhua, they're reporting to the Chinese Communist Party. So like, there's no really, you know, they're spies, but their work is above board. It's superliminal. It's like they're quite literally saying, whatever you tell me, I'm going to share with China and the Chinese Communist Party. But we do have spies, probably sneaking across the southern border right now for China. And we know it's happening. So for this to happen, I got to be honest, when they announce something like a reporter got arrested, my immediate thought is not, oh no, they've arrested an innocent journalist, they must be evil. My immediate thought is like, interesting. I need to hear more about this because innocent until proven guilty. I don't trust Vladimir Putin, but at the same time, I don't see him creating this kind of problem and PR problem unless it means something.
Yeah.
The arrest of Gershkovich means that people in the United States are going to be aggressive towards Russia, and he knows that. So there's a reason. And I'll say it again. On the surface, I'm saying it was an opportunity to release him. I wonder if Gershkovich actually learned something so serious that he cannot be allowed to speak to the Americans or to the West in general.
That would be crazy.
I mean, probably.
I like the part where Putin says, Tucker asks who blew up the Nord Stream. And Putin goes, you did. He goes, Tucker goes, I was busy that day. And then Putin says the CIA didn't have an alibi.
CIA.
Wild. CIA, yeah. CIA didn't have an alibi. Who else could sink to the bottom of the Baltic Sea?
This is an interesting one. This is from the same interview. Putin slams U.S. and Bill Clinton for deceiving Russia over NATO membership as he trashes Biden, praises Trump, and warns there's no stopping his supersonic missile system. This is interesting. Putin says that Bill Clinton offered Russia a place in NATO, but was overruled by his staff. So basically what happens is Putin was like, look, in the 90s, I meet with Bill Clinton, and there's pictures of it. Tucker posts pictures. He includes pictures in the interview. And I said, look, if Russia wants to join NATO, would that be possible? And Bill Clinton said, I think so, yeah. And then comes back later that night for dinner or whatever. I think that's what he said. And Clinton says, we talked about it. It's not going to happen. Putin said the reason was the U.S. applies pressure on all the NATO member states, and they vote the way the U.S. wants. Having a nation as powerful as Russia, as large, would mean that U.S. influence would be compromised to a certain degree within NATO. I'll say outright, that is Vladimir Putin's propaganda. On this, look, I'll tell you, first and foremost, obviously the U.S. exerts the most influence over NATO, especially when we're footing all the bills. But also, his reason for why he got kicked out of the club, I'm not going to take it at 100%. I think there's some truth to it, but he's giving you the I'm always the good guy narrative.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of the Nord Stream stuff, did you see this was a while back, but the New York Times had a headline that was like, it's better that we don't get the truth. Yeah, it's better that we don't know. That headline was the creepiest one. It's New York Times. Oh, you're looking for the recent stuff?
Yeah.
But it's just bizarre. I mean, Biden just point blank said that we did it, basically.
Thanks for watching this clip from the Timcast IRL podcast. Hang out with us live Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. and become a member over at timcast.com for uncensored, members-only shows exclusive. Thanks for hanging out, and we'll see you all next time.